It has been tough sledding for DC movies and DC fans, with what feels like a decade at least, with several misses. The same exact criticisms kept getting made. This movie is too dark. The tone is way off. They don't respect the source material. Sloppy writing, big egos, and just a mess altogether. All of these things prove to be the final nail in the coffin for the DCEU. A few years passed without any sign of a new DC movie. It looked as though this company was just doomed. That was until a new leader was picked to reboot the universe, to remake the DC universe, to usher in a new era for DC comic book characters. James Gunn, the man behind the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Suicide Squad, and Peacemaker, was chosen for the job. And his first real project for this new universe? Superman. James Gunn gave DC fans a new lease on life. They had optimism once again. They were excited. And for the first time in a long time, finally, DC had hope. And Superman is exactly that, a beacon of hope. Not just figuratively or in the confines of his own world, but rather hope that the DC universe can get back to being the amazing, fantastic world that it once was. So, does Superman do what it sets out to do? Is this the glimmer of hope that DC fans have needed? Absolutely! Guys, I enjoyed this movie so much. If this is any indication of what James Gunn's DCU will be like, then sign me up. Now, I won't be including any spoilers for this review or going into any plot points or character moments or anything like that, anything specific. So rest assured you are in a safe place. I promise. I'm going to break this down into three sections: the positives, things I really liked about the movie and enjoyed, the negatives, some things I didn't like or was, a little mixed on, and my overall thoughts on what to expect after this. So without further ado, let's start the review for James Gunn's Superman. First and foremost, the overall tone and vibe of this movie is 100% a comic book brought to life. It feels like an episode of the animated series at times, while also being one gigantic comic book adventure for Superman and friends to go on. The action and humor feels refreshing. The look of this movie is incredible, for the most part, but I'll get into that later. If you wanted a true comic book movie that captures the essence of what Superman comics were about, this is the movie, in my opinion, that does it the best. The cast in this movie is incredible. Everyone did an amazing job in this film. Everybody deserves a round of applause, but I do have a couple of big standouts. First and foremost, David Corenswet is Superman. He gets it. He represents everything I love about the character. He is a symbol of hope and a symbol of doing good for the world and for humanity. That is what Superman is all about. It's not always about beating up the bad guy, but making sure everyone is safe in the process. And David Cornsweet nailed it. His supporting role, Lois Lane, played by Rachel Brosnahan, was also fantastic. The chemistry these two have works perfectly. You can tell that these two characters like each other, that there's a connection with them. And she does a really good job of playing the reporter, not always the friend to Superman. Sometimes a reporter has to do things that aren't exactly that nice. While David Cornsweet is a great Superman, he needs a good foil. That foil is Lex Luthor, played by Nicholas Holt. Holy cow, this guy is horrible. And I love it. You're not meant to like a guy like Lex Luthor. He's meant to be a slimy, deceiving, conniving, evil jerk. And that's exactly what Nicholas Holt does here. He gets it. He nails every aspect of Lex Luthor. This one is a major surprise. Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner. I do not like the character Guy Gardner. I'll be the first to admit. I think he looks ridiculous with his bowl cut. I think he's too aggressive to be a Green Lantern. But man, Nathan Fillion has made me want to see a Guy Gardner spin-off show or a Guy Gardner related movie. More Guy Gardner, please. I could not get enough of this guy. Speaking of couldn't get enough of a character, Eddie Gathegi as Mr. Terrific is exactly that. Terrific. He might have been my favorite character in the entire movie. I loved every scene that involved Mr. Terrific. Action scenes, humor scenes, serious scenes, you name it. This guy was a standout. Well done, Mr. Gathegi. And of course, I cannot talk about the Superman movie and the cast and the characters and all that without bringing up the most adorable member, Crypto the Super Dog. If you love cute dogs, don't worry. Crypto has got you covered. He also has his own humor scenes. He has his own action scenes. So yeah, Crypto gets involved in the action. He's not just a pretty face. He's biting people and kicking them and all that. I loved Crypto. Great addition. But again, the cast was fantastic. And I also got to give a shout out, a special shout out to Ma and Pa Kent's actor and actress. I love those two, and I really wanted to see more of them in this movie. They're not really in the movie as much as you would expect for a Superman movie, which was a little weird, but they serve their purpose nonetheless. It's not a negative or anything. I just want to see more of them because I like those characters. Just so kind and down to earth. James Gunn got this cast perfect. This movie is just beautiful to look at. The visuals from scene to scene, they really help push that this movie is a comic book brought to life. Some of my favorite shots are just Superman flying around doing his thing or looking like a symbol of hope for humanity. One scene in particular really stood out, and without giving it away or spoiling anything, trust me when I tell you, that defines Superman. The Man of Steel doesn't just get all the credit, though. As close up shots of buildings being destroyed, close up shots of Lex and Mr. Terrific, the effects and visuals of Green Lantern's powers, all of that look beautiful and breathtaking. But what would a Superman movie be without its action? Well, yeah. Let's let's not talk about that. Instead, let's talk about how awesome it is to see Superman doing what he does best. Beat up the baddies. You get it all in this movie for the most part. Every mainline Superman ability is on display, and the cinematography used during these action scenes and uses of his powers propel them even higher. But Soups isn't the only one dishing out pain. As I said before, you get to see some Green Lantern action. Hulk Girl has some standout moments, and Mr. Terrific, my goodness, he steals the show. I think he has the best action scene in the entire film. But those baddies, those villains, yeah, they're not just lying down, no. They too join in the action, and they cause Superman and company a lot of pain. Honestly, if you just want to see this movie, to see some Superman fighting and beating up bad guys and classic comic book superhero action, then you won't be disappointed in this movie in the slightest. You'll enjoy this movie even more than I probably did. Now, some people may see this as a negative, as sometimes the humor in this movie may take away from a serious moment or scene, being the James Gunn formula. But I have to disagree. This was meant to be a more lighthearted movie, and it's embracing that. It's embracing the comic book style. It's getting away from that dark, grungy, just serious all the time tone DCEU. So, yeah, it's going to get goofy and silly at times. Besides, the movie does have a few moments where it lets the serious parts shine. There are moments that are not broken up with a joke. There are moments where it does take itself seriously. There are moments where things get serious, things get really important for our characters and get dire for our characters. But regardless, this movie is hilarious. I've mentioned him before, but Eddie Gathegi, he just has great chemistry with almost anyone he shares a scene with. And he plays the straight man for the most part with all of his humor. Where they're being silly and cracking jokes, he's playing the straight man, but in playing the straight man, he too is hilarious. David Cornsweat's Clark and Superman also get a nice handful of jokes in there that land nicely. Yeah, it may make some people upset, but honestly, I loved the jokey parts of this film. They created some nice, memorable moments for me to reflect on. Now, I recognize that James Gunn's style has been seen as a negative from some people. And I will say this right now that I know not everyone is going to enjoy this movie as much as I did. Some people might not like this movie at all. James Gunn does not play it safe with this movie, okay? Anyone who tells you this is a safe Superman movie is not telling the truth. He makes some bold decisions involving the character of Superman and his nature of doing things and what he's all about. And you're either going to love or hate those decisions. And I fall into the love category for the most part. He's not afraid to show his vision for this variant of Superman. And I love that. It's a unique take, but it's not so different to where it doesn't feel like the comic book character of Superman. He also makes sure that this movie is its own standalone thing without having to connect or set up too many plot points for future movies. Now, there are some sprinkles here and there for sure that set up other things. I mentioned I would love to see some Guy Gardner. I do think they will be setting that up. There's a couple other things that get set up for the future, but it's mostly Superman's movie, and I love that. We don't get many standalone comic book movies anymore. They are mostly all used to set up the next movie or set up some big blow off movie 2 years down the road. In fact, this film has two post credit scenes that aren't really much of anything. Are they enjoyable? Yeah, I enjoyed them quite a lot. But do they lead to a big earth shattering reveal? No. And that's great. We need more standalone movies like this one. Now, I really enjoyed this movie, but this movie's not perfect by any means. And I do have a few issues with the movie. So while I said the visuals were a positive, they are also a negative. There's just some times where the CGI looks awkward and a bit bad. It's nothing that ruins the film for me, but it is noticeable, and if that is something that bothers you, it's going to take your enjoyment down. Now, I'm not going to act like this is an incredible writing or an incredible script, and for the most part, it's nothing bad, but it's nothing really special for a script, but it doesn't need to be. However, a good portion of the dialogue is a lot of exposition dumping. Again, nothing that ruins the movie for me, but it does become apparent that some scenes were kind of just here to explain what's happening rather than letting that scene play out on its own. The movie flies by as fast as Superman, but that's not always a good thing. There's times where the movie is moving faster than a speeding bullet, but other times it's going at a crawl. And that can be jarring and take people out of the movie. But once again, this isn't that big of a deal for me. It is a minor nitpick, but it didn't ruin the movie. Okay, so apart from Lex Luthor, which I think is great and probably the scene or show stealer, the other antagonists, I'll be honest, aren't anything too special. Ultraman was a bit of a disappointment for me in this movie. The same goes for the kaiju and that other character, the Hammer of Boravia. The Lex does a great job and is a perfect foil to David's Superman, but the rest of the villains didn't do too much for me personally. As you can tell, though, I still had a great time with this film. But how much of a good time did I have? Well, let's go to the NAZENET movie grading scale to find out. Now, I'll be grading all movies that I review, any movie I review, on the same four categories: the story, the acting, the cinematography slash visuals, and the rewatchability of this movie. Because I believe if a movie is not rewatchable, then it's not really that good of a movie. Those are the core four. However, depending on the movie, I'm going to look at other aspects. For example, for comic book slash action movies, I'll look at the action. For comedy, I'll look at the humor and jokes. For horror, I'm going to look at the suspense, horror, and maybe gore aspects of it. For an adventure film, how well is the world building? How well did they do with the adventure itself? Etc., etc. Now, without further ado, let's get to grading. I'm going to give the story an 8 out of 10. It has some pacing problems and isn't the most incredible plot ever, but overall, it's still a well put together plot. Acting is getting a 9 out of 10 because every character does a phenomenal job and they really bring the characters they play to life. But I will admit there's a couple of performances in here that I was just kind of meh about. Cinematography and visuals? Yeah, I gotta go with a 7.5 out of 10. This is a nice looking movie, a very nice looking movie with some great shots that I will remember for a long time. But the bad CGI moments, I really can't ignore. They're noticeable and you're gonna notice them too. For rewatchability, I got a 9 out of 10. Besides those CGI hiccups, I could rewatch this movie over and over. In fact, I plan on seeing the movie at least 2 more times in theaters and a tons more once it goes to streaming. The simple script may not be that amazing, but it does make for a nice, easy, digestible film. I'm looking at the action here and I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. Again, besides a few bad CGI moments, the action is fantastic. Seeing these characters duke it out and the collateral damage of buildings getting broken and roads getting destroyed and seeing characters fly across the city and all that, I don't think I'll ever get old of that. I don't think I'll ever get tired of that. Final verdict, I'm going to give both a critic score and a fan score. For the fan score, I'm going a little bit nicer. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. I think general audiences will enjoy this film a lot. It's got the fun humor, it's got good action, it's just a nice comic book tone that a lot of people will be able to have fun with. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and you shouldn't take it too seriously. It's Superman, it's not Citizen Kane. Comic book lovers, I think, will also enjoy it, but I do think there will be a divide between them because of the bold decisions James Gunn makes. Hence why I'm giving fan score a 9 out of 10. But critically, I'm going to rate this at an 8.5 out of 10. I think the visuals and pacing issues are going to make the critics and myself a little harder on this film, but not hard to the point where it ruins the film. It's still a great comic book movie, and I recommend anyone interested to go out and see this movie in theaters right now. I mean, finish this video first and then go see it, obviously. But seriously, you need to see this movie if you're a comic book fan, if you're a Superman fan, or if you're just looking for a good movie just to kill 2 hours and just have a good time with. This is the movie for you. Overall, I love this movie. It does have some negatives that I'm sure, again, are going to affect people a bit more, depending on what bothers you the most. But I'm not one of those people. I thought this was a great introduction for James Gunn's DC universe. I look forward to seeing how he mixes it up with Supergirl, a character that's similar to Superman, but different enough to where she could be her own and have a different tone and style. And I especially want to see his take on Batman, a much darker toned character with darker, more serious themes and more grounded themes. Only time's gonna tell that. But again, I can't wait to see what the future holds for this cinematic universe that finally has hope once again. Hey, thanks for taking the time to listen to me ramble on about Superman. If you enjoyed the review, consider leaving a thumbs up and subscribing. I'll have more reviews of both new and old films. It does not matter. 70s, 60s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, whatever. The new stuff that's coming out, I'm reviewing that as well. So if that's your thing, like I said, consider leaving a subscribe, a thumbs up. Comment down below if you've seen Superman. What was your favorite thing about it? No spoilers in the comments section, please. Let's be respectful. But do tell me if you enjoyed the movie or not. And if you haven't and are going to see it, tell me what you're looking forward to the most. Thanks again, guys, and enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you soon.